you ever been to like we could get Donovan on the air too. Maybe he'll remember because he's been a fan since probably a pretty young age as well. Donovan, have you ever been to a show where you would call it a riot? Like, where an actual riot took place?
Yeah, no, I've never been to one. I've heard of different things, and I actually have a tape of a match that happened in Mexico, and I don't even know when it was, but I know the fans were just going ballistic. And,
was it with a bunch of chairs thrown with psychosis?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, because I got that tape too.
And yeah, that was the one that I'm thinking of. But other than that, you basically, things in pro wrestling get so blown out of proportion. Someone throws a cup in the ring, and sooner than you know it, everyone's saying it was a riot. So unless you see it for yourself, you don't really know.
Yeah, there have been like fights. I think that maybe in Wise, Virginia, it may have come pretty close to a riot because they couldn't come back, with Smoky Mountain towards the end. But, God, I've been to so many pro matches, and I can't recall. I've been at some scenes that at the sports arena in L.A. at the AAA cards where it was with Jake Roberts and everything, where the heat was so much that like one false move, and it really could have been a riot. And it was one of those things where, you feel it in the air that it could really get bad, and you sort of had that little scariness in your stomach. And it was bad as far as like tons of stuff being thrown. I mean, like they threw a million things, but it was like never dangerous to where people were really fighting in the stands, and you were actually in any physical danger at all.
I know that Damian Steele, actual UPW wrestler, is down in Puerto Rico right now. And he called me the other night and told me that he was getting handfuls of batteries thrown at him in the ring, like AA and AAA batteries. He said that people were just chucking them at him, and they were hitting him in the head and in the shoulder. And, so it gets a little more intense down in those areas, I think, than it does, in America.
Yeah, Puerto Rico fans have always, I think, the first time...
China mentioned that in a book, too, fans throwing batteries.
Where?
In her book.
China did?
Yeah.
Well, remember in a couple of years back, WWF was running in Memphis and Little Rock on successive nights, and the fans basically rioted both nights, and they had to cancel because Shawn Michaels was getting so much heat.
I heard about that.
Yeah, I mean they stopped the show, and and actually the riots in both cases took place after they stopped the show when Shawn Michaels walked off and said we're not going to have a main event. And that's when the people rioted, actually, because the WWF wouldn't offer refunds and they didn't give a main event.
Right.
And then the people were storming the box office and stuff, and there were arrests and things like that on those nights. Let's get off that subject. I just want to introduce everyone to Donovan Morgan. Donovan Morgan works for All Pro Wrestling, and he's wrestled for a lot of different independent groups, not only here in California, but all over the United States. He's also the head trainer at All Pro Wrestling, and we're just going to talk about, basically breaking into pro wrestling, a little bit of his background, and it's tough business, and why you're in it. And before we do that, do you know anything about the BET situation with Urban? Because I know you've worked some shows for Urban.
Yeah, as of right now, like I talked to Michael Modest yesterday, and he told me that they're supposed to be that their first show was supposed to be on Wednesday at 8.
Yeah, I thought it was supposed to be last night.
Yeah. So if it didn't air, I don't have any more news for you other than that. But I know that, and I don't know if anyone knows if it airs. If they did see it, call in and let us know. But I don't know. That's the only thing that I heard.
Yeah, you didn't hear anything, Brian, did you? I mean, I tuned into BET a couple of times last night, and there was no wrestling on. I didn't remember what the time was.
Yeah, we have actually the screwed up cable, so we get BET till like 5 o'clock, and then we don't get it after that. So
it's supposed to be on at 8.
There's a I don't know.
You need to move to like your brother-in-law's house or something.
I just give up sometimes. I'm surprised we got TNN.
Yeah. Donovan, basically, when did you start being a fan, and when did you start training and everything like that, and just give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Basically, people always ask me, so when did you want to do this? When did you want to start pro wrestling? 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Actually, this is all I have ever wanted to do in my life. And since I was 7, and the first time I got a TV set, turned on the TV, and I saw Paul Orndorff, and I was just, you know, enamored by this guy. And so ever since then, it was like locked in, and it was such a, you know, a goal for me, even at a real young age. All the way through high school, you know, of course, you know, constantly made fun of, and at the time being very small, you know, people saying, well, even if you do want to do this, you're just way too small, you know, 5'10", you know, in high school, and you know, $160, and people were just like, you know, there's no way. But I just stuck with it, you know. I loved pro wrestling so much that I was one of those kids that you couldn't tell. Well, you could be a referee, or you could be this, you could be that. No, I wanted to be a pro wrestler. You know, I loved it so much, and you know, growing up through high school and stuff, you know, of course, did the backyard thing, you know, and I actually built a ring in my backyard. That was pretty good. But getting onto the subject of backyard wrestling, you know, my backyard days were a lot different from you know, kids today. It wasn't jumping off the roofs and hitting each other over the head, you know, with chairs and trash cans. It was more, I was really in tune with guys like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and Dean Malenko. Those were like my favorite guys. And so when I would get in the backyard, I would you know, put on different holds, and I would, you know, practice psychology of a match because I heard it before, and I knew that it meant, you know, some type of story needs to be told in a match. And so at a very young age, I actually had like just a little grasp. You know, I wasn't a know-it-all, you know, at all, but I had a little grasp of what wrestling was about and the concept, and that, you know, you could get over if you did tell a story with an arm or a leg, you know. And so basically when I got out of high school, you know, I was just looking for different wrestling schools, and I was looking, you know, and knowing nothing about wrestling, you know, looking, you know, at Adrian Street School, because, you know, it's the cheapest school, and I can be a pro wrestler in 3 months, and, you know, oh wow, you know, it's, you know, easy way to go. And luckily I ran across Roland Alexander, and I told Roland, you know, a little bit about how much I like wrestling, and Roland said, we'll come down and take a look at the facility. And so I came down with my dad, and my dad said, you know, you got to go to college, you know, at least junior college, and then, you know, move on. And if you want to do this wrestling thing, you know, go for it. But you got to at least do a couple years of school. And it was like while I was doing school, all my mind was on wrestling. I was like, I have to do this. I'm wasting time right now. I could be doing the wrestling, you know, stupid kid that I was. You know, I should have stayed in school, but, you know, I like wrestling so much. So I ended up quitting, and I told my dad, I have to at least fail at this. Let me fail miserably, and then I'll go to school. I promise you I'll go. But I have to try this. And so Roland, I came to Roland, and I said, Roland, I know you charge $6,000 for your 2-year school, but I have no money. And Roland said, well, you can do some work around the office and help out, and I'll train you for free. And so for those guys that, you know, think Roland's all about the money and stuff, Roland does have a good soft spot in his heart, because, you know, he never charged me or Modest a dime to train. So basically, you know, I was so lucky because I had Modest here all the time, and I lived at the school. I moved down from Modesto, where I grew up, and I moved to Hayward and started training, and it was like every day Modest would be like, let's get in the ring, let's get in the ring. And when I wouldn't want to get in the ring, he'd get mad at me, you know, and yell at me and tell me, you know, how do you expect to make it if you don't get in the ring? You know, you're never going to get anywhere, not even make a name for yourself on the independent scene. And so I ended up training here in April. I've been here 5 years, but I'll tell you, like, each year has held something special for me. After the first year that I trained here, you know, I got a WCW tryout. Yeah, my first match with WCW was a tryout, and you know, it was pretty ironic because when I walked into Arco Arena to get the tryout, you know, Paul Orndorff looked at Roland and he looked at me and he said, "Is this one of the guys?" And Roland said, "Yeah." And Paul goes, "Well, he's a little small, don't you think?" And Roland goes, "Yeah, well, he's good." And Paul goes, "Well, he better be damn good." And I was just like, oh, my gosh, you know.
That's a confidence builder.
21 years old, you know, and I'm going to wrestle in front of, you know, 18,000 people, and I've been in the business a year, and here's the guy that, that made me really get into wrestling in the first place. And but after the match, after the tag match, there was nothing but compliments and good things said. But here again, we come to the body thing. If I would have spent less time goofing around in my backyard, building rings and such, and worked on my body like John Cena did for 11 years before he got into pro wrestling, I might have had a closer shot. I might have had something more than I do now. But those are the kind of things you learn, and luckily, I was still young. And so from there, I've had some dark matches with the World Wrestling Federation, and, I actually just as of this past year, year 2000, going on a lot of independent bookings and kind of making a name for myself in the independent scene, which is good. I'd say 2000 has been my best year so far, just because I really turned around my body and really worked hard on all aspects, not only in the ring but in the weight room. And so I got chances, like I got to wrestle Kay Quick last week when WWF was here in San Jose. And it's just little things like that. Every little thing counts. Every little interview you do, every match you get. So it's built up to this point. The 5-year point. And I think Pat Patterson told me one time at a Cauliflower Alley that it takes about 5 years to start getting your name out there. And once you're at the 5-year mark, I think I'm on the right track. So I'm definitely happy.
How do you like? You're working are you working pretty much as a full-time trainer now?
Yeah, I'm the head camp instructor at APW now, and that's going real good. Actually, I'm making a living now off of pro wrestling, and which is a great feeling, especially since that's all you ever wanted to do in life. But that is what I'm doing, Dave.
Now, what different wrestling companies in the last couple of months have you worked for, and compare them? I know when we were in L.A., you're talking about All Pro and UPW,
right.
And stylistically, how you totally have to approach a match differently for each of those two companies.
Yeah, definitely. Like I've worked for UPW for about the past 4 months, and going down to UPW, it's a lot different. WWF developmental territory, so to speak, and When I wrestled APW, for example, I wrestled Chris Daniels for 20 minutes, Michael Modest for 25 minutes. You're able to wrestle down in LA for UPW. It's like you've got the referee telling you, okay, get ready to go home. Hurry up, speed the match up, which is good practice. It's good because that's what the World Wrestling Federation is like, and they want to groom you, they want to mold you to those specifications. But you can't go in there and tell a story with the arm for 10 minutes and then go into your spots and then go home with an arm submission. It doesn't work that way down in UPW. It's more quick pace, more fight. More what you see on the WWF. I've also worked for I've worked for XPW, for example, and that was kind of an interesting time. When I went down to XPW, the fans were so accustomed to seeing the very first match. There were tables broken, people bleeding, bottles broken, chairs, and it's like when you go out there and take a headlock, you just get booed right out of the building. No one wants to see a headlock, They want to see someone get killed. So you have to adjust yourself to that. Now, to be honest with you, when I was down at XPW, I really didn't care that the fans, would boo a headlock. Because, if I know how to wrestle, so if people don't want to see wrestling, I could care less. But that's the way I was trained. I was trained, how to wrestle, not how to hit someone over the head with a chair. But it was a learning experience, that's for sure. Go ahead.
As far as all the different styles and places that you have to go,
right?
What do you? Is there times where you think that you're training to do this style of wrestling that we, sometimes see, but we don't see a lot, and usually we only see it from main eventers, and then, that are given the time on television to do it. To an extent, WCW still does it, and WWF's trying to do it again. in some ways, because they're trying to tone down on the crazy stuff. And then you go to a place like XPW where the mentality of the fan is like totally different than how you were trained to wrestle. I mean, you kind of said like, you don't care, but does it ever go through your mind like, like, oh my God. I mean, there have been nights where I have been at shows, where you have a different type of an audience, and an audience that doesn't like wrestling sometimes, where you just go, oh my God, it's like, if somebody went out there and did like what we would call a great match, these people would 2 minutes in just like hate it and not give it a chance, and you sort of get sad.
Exactly. It's a lost art, I mean, like, I feel like APW, we train wrestlers, we train good wrestlers, but what does that mean nowadays? It doesn't mean jack. What means jack is if you can juggle, or if you can get your gimmick over, and if you have a good body. It doesn't matter if you know how good you could be the fattest guy on earth and know ring psychology and have great fundamentals, but it's not going to mean anything. And so I know what you're saying, because I do go to places and I'm like, God, man, it's like I was trained something totally different than what's going on here. This is a whole different thing to me. But it's good in a way because I just take it and try to adapt to it as much as I can. With a place like XPW, it's really hard to adapt because the fans, are so tainted anyway. In UPW, it's not as hard. It's actually a real good learning tool. It's a good learning experience.
I think ultimately the WWF is going to take a guy that has great fundamentals, though, over, or at least take him to the big time before they'll take someone with just a great body and nothing else. I mean, they signed John Cena, but they're going to want him to be, in the developmental group until he can, work.
Oh, yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it goes totally unnoticed, like people's talents and abilities, I'm just saying that for the most part, WWF is going to sign people, the first thing that they're going to look at, obviously, the first thing is body. Mm-hmm. And then there's the exceptions to the rule. But I believe that the first thing that, people go, agents look at a guy like John Cena, for example, and go, wow, he's got a hell of a body. Look, great face, good look. Man, let's sign him and then, let's see if he can work in the ring, So it's like body's first and foremost, at least, in my mind, but there are those guys. There are the exceptions.
Well, it's funny was when I was at the UPW show last month, and they had Nathan Jones, who is, former World's Strongest Man competitor, and he's 6'10". He's a gigantic human being. And I had known that WWF had just signed him to a developmental deal, in the last couple of months. And I'd heard of him, and I'd actually seen him I'd seen him in Japan do a match once. And so I was kind of like, well, and then, when he went and did it in Japan, he had no training, no nothing. He was just kind of thrown in there.
Right.
Because of his size and because of his credentials. And I was thinking, okay, let's see how far he's gone. And then I went down there, and he's like at the bodyguard level, and he actually, as I recall, never even touched anyone. So that tells me just how early in training that he's at. And yet, because he's 6'10", and because he has that credential, he already had a developmental contract, whereas Christopher Daniels,
oh, I know,
who, we're sitting there, who's in the main event on that same show, who everyone in the country knows is a good worker, but he's, 210 or whatever it is. He's like, they haven't figured out, either WWF or WCW hasn't figured out a way to utilize, Christopher or Michael, who's another one who,
right.
two of the guys that everyone talks about all the time when they go, bring in, this guy, because they're good workers. These are really, really good workers, but, it doesn't catch someone's eye because physically they're average size, and they even have, for a guy on the street, I'm not saying for, I'm not saying compared to Ken Shamrock, but for a guy on the street, if you look at those guys, and they're big, thick guys who've lifted a lot of weights, who train regularly, and it's not like they have no body.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like for a developmental deal, they're going to just go straight for the look. But, even if you have the greatest look in the world, if you can't perform, they're not going to call you up.
Yeah, that's true. You'll get the chance, but ultimately, look at Brockus. Remember Brockus?
That's just who I was going to mention, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
The guy was a world-class bodybuilder, and he was tall. He had size, and they brought him up and they gave him a chance. And, you know, people were impressed by his body, but ultimately he did not stick because he didn't learn how to wrestle well enough for this. So you're right, Brian.
David Nelson.
David Nelson, I think, was more attitude than anything else. But, you know, David Nelson, my God. Donovan, do you ever see David Nelson?
No, I haven't.
David Nelson, I mean, he was bigger than Scott Steiner.
Really?
I mean, he was a freak. I mean, like.
Was he the guy with the big arms?
He had giant arms.
Yeah.
I think they said he benched 725.
Yeah, I know.
Played pro football, looked like you know, a Mr. California level bodybuilder. I mean, just a freak. And I mean, I saw him do moonsaults. I mean, he's an agile guy, but mentally, and I mean, it's funny because, you know, I'd been to a couple of shows where he was backstage before he'd even had his first match, and everybody's just like, you know, you see a guy like that, and everyone notices him and goes, oh my God, you know, because he's just giant arms, right?
Right.
And, you know, they kind of think, oh my God, you know, whatever. But he had that bodybuilder attitude where I could tell, and as it turned out, when he got cut, it was exactly what they said. And before he ever had his first match, I knew that he would be one of these guys who had trouble mentally doing jobs for guys smaller than him. You know, you know, the big guy attitude?
Right. Oh, yeah.
And ultimately, that's what did him in WWF was that they were having him, you know, job for 210-pound guys that were better wrestlers and more experienced. And mentally, you know, he just couldn't take it because from football, I mean, which was a shoot sport, you know, I mean, he would eat that same guy for lunch.
Right. And that's funny because, you know, this business throws so many things at you from so many different angles. It's like guys with bodies, for example, and that attitude, you know, it's like wrestling's changed so much where people don't pay the dues that, you know, older wrestlers used to pay. And the trade isn't learned, you know, people don't love to learn this business anymore. There's still some that do, you know, like a Chris Daniels, myself, Michael Modest, you know, we all love this business, you know, for some odd reason, and we're in it and we're trying, and even though there are guys like the UPW Nathan Jones, you know, who get to go to Japan, and they've never even done anything in pro wrestling before, and here I am, been in the business 5 years, and working my ass off to try and get over there. You know, is it fair? No, it's not, but it's not something, you know, to get bent out of shape about. That's the business. That's the way the business is, and it makes me work that much harder.
It says, why was Brian blaming run-ins and such on Thunder on Eric? It's completely unfair to blame things like that on Eric when he's not even writing TV. Why is everyone getting on Eric's case about mistakes the writing team makes? I don't think I blamed it on Eric. Did I? I don't know. I don't remember exactly. I think you just said that, like, you know, the two shows had the same, you know, the Monday and the Wednesday show both ended the same way, and that wasn't a good start, which is true.
I did note, what I said was the first two main event finishes of the new Bischoff era ended in DQs. I didn't necessarily blame him. Yeah.
No, the thing is that the writing is being done by the writing staff, but there's a certain general direction, and Eric does deserve the criticism because he can insert anything.
He can do whatever he wants.
He can do whatever he wants. I mean, as far as like the angles and everything like that, generally like a small angle, like something like General Erection and Chavo Guerrero, it's probably totally unfair to blame Eric Bischoff because that's really not what he's concentrating on is General Erection and Chavo Guerrero's angle. But just an example, like whatever you think of the decision to air the Sid Vicious footage, that was Eric Bischoff's decision. I mean, he makes decisions of the big things, and you know, for right or wrong, I agree with the Sid Vicious decision. The decision not to mention the Young Dragons match coming off that pay-per-view. I mean, it's not like he said, well, okay, announcers, you can't say it for 2 hours. I don't think he said that, but he could have said, okay, you know what? It's a new era. We want to get over workers. Those guys had a hell of a match. I want you to show some like clips of it and really put over what a great match it was, help sell the replay with it. If he would have said that, it would have been in the show. It would have found a place. So if you want to criticize, yes, you can criticize Eric Bischoff for that. So, anyway. We got a bunch of emails in the last day regarding Steve Austin going heel at the Survivor Series, with everyone having basically the same storyline.
At the Rumble?
At the Rumble, I'm sorry. Everyone having the same basic storyline that Vince McMahon and you know, that he would side with Vince McMahon against The Rock, and that people would boo him for that. And they probably would.
That makes sense, actually, if you look at past couple weeks TV.
Yeah, they may very well be doing that. This is from Jerry, who says, with Scott Keith's book coming out soon, is there any way you could get him on the show? Yeah, I had just heard today that his book was coming out, and Scott's a regular listener to the show, and he's emailed many, many times, and oh, yeah. I mean, when the book comes out, I'd love to get a copy of the book when it's out, and we would definitely book him as a guest on the show. So, absolutely. Absolutely. This is from John Engel, who says, an interesting side note of the WWF's exaggerating Andre the Giant's height, the Jax THQ most recent Nintendo 64 game, No Mercy, has a secret character, Andre the Giant, and his height in the game is 7'11". Pretty good, huh? Let's see. Tim Drake goes, yesterday I believe you mentioned Richard Sullivan finished his history of Ric Flair. I've only read the first 8 chapters, which go up to 1981, which were posted on the web earlier this year. Do you know where I can find the chapters of the post-81 period? Richard Sullivan is another regular listener. I've never read it. I didn't even know he had it. But I know that he had listed 24 Ric Flair turns as of this week. Let me see. Is WCW interested in Jerry Lynn or Rob Van Dam? I mean, they're aware of him, the interest level. I don't really know. I don't think they've gone out of their way to, like, recruit them. I mean, if they were to go to Jerry Lynn or Rob Van Dam with a big money offer, I think they'd get them both right now. And obviously that hasn't happened because they haven't gotten either. Hopefully they'd have some interest there. This is a couple stuff for Donovan. It's from Alex Gage, who goes, I've heard rumors that Donovan was in contact about wrestling in the UK. Who did you speak with? What were they like? And do you have any plans to come to the UK?
Yeah, actually, Ross Gordon from, oh man, I can't even remember the letter.
Ultimate something, right?
Yeah, it was like UWC or something.
Something like that, yeah.
They contacted me about possibly going down there, and Daniels had also contacted me about, he wrestled a few shows down there. I know he wrestled Joey Flash, and I know Ross Gordon, the guy that heads everything up, called me, and I sent him some stuff, and he said in 2001, looks like I'll be going down there. So hopefully, yeah, keep my fingers crossed. And
what did you think about your match with K-Quick? And he just says that you did a really nice exploder suplex in there.
Well, thank you. My match with K-Quick, it's like I wasn't happy with it, and that's nothing against him. You know, it was like I just felt I was capable of so much more, but it was like one of those things. You know, he hit me with that drop kick off the top rope, and the bump that was so brutal, it knocked me out for a couple seconds. And so when I got back up, I was moving a little slow, and it just kind of threw the pace of the match off a little bit. The match started out good, you know, but me getting knocked out kind of threw things off. So, you know, the match was good, but I thought it could have been a lot better, you know, hadn't I rung my bell.
And this is from someone who goes, I don't know if you still care, but Roller Jam is airing the final episode on Friday. While they had a television taping over the summer, and ECW hasn't had television in a couple of weeks, it's kind of ironic that the two shows that TNN had planned to build Friday night around last year both seem to be going defunct at the same time. And, I mean, I didn't know that Roller Jam was dying.
Going off the air, huh?
That Roller Jam was dying this Friday, but, you know, it was inevitable. It never made. Donovan, you know, you grew up here. I guess you're a little young for that. Did you ever have any interest in the roller derby type thing?
You know what? Most everyone here at APW did, except for me. I never did.
Yes, because you're a little bit young.
Yeah, I think that had a little bit to do with it.
Well, it would have died, like, right when you were born.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were, like, 10 years older, you know, like, growing up, you know, here, I mean, every kid, you had to know about it. It was so big through about 1973, and we were born right about 1970. No, we were born about 75.
Actually.
76? Okay.
Yeah.
So it was already dead by then.
Yeah.
There is a guy, Bob, I should mention this. This was about a week or two ago. I was out to dinner with my sister-in-law, and she has a writing class with someone named Bob Levy from San Francisco, and who's been a subscriber to The Observer probably 13, 14 years. And this was one of the nicest gifts. I guess it would have been Christmas, right before Christmas. And so she gives me this Christmas present that she got from Bob Levy, and it was every issue, I guess, of Roller Derby Illustrated. This guy had saved all of these issues from, I mean, I actually last night just glanced at them from, you know, I probably would have started around 71 through about 75 when the A different version of roller derby went defunct. And, these things, they're probably worth so much to the very few collectors who are still alive, and he gave them to me as a present saying, I was like, oh, God, I was just blown away.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, but somebody who said, I had gotten a lot of them when I was a kid, but I didn't, who would have saved these things for 25 years?
Right.
Unbelievable. This is from Mike, who goes, there's no doubt in my mind that Vince McMahon could beat up Jeff Jarrett. Don't forget, Vince beat up all the Marines. He said so in the Kevin Cook interview, so it's got to be true.
That's right.
Says Taz was on TRL today. That's and said that he was plugging the Tough Man show, WF Tough Man show, that's going to air over the summer. He made it sound like he's going to be the host and the guy running the camp. Is this true? I don't know. I haven't really talked to anyone much about that Tough Man show. It just showed up. They just started plugging it a week ago, and we'll see. And he goes, also with Jerry Lawler hosting XFL, will Taz do commentary on SmackDown with Michael Cole? How many things can Lawler do? He's going to be overworked. Ross and Lawler, I'll tell you what, when I heard that they were both doing the Saturday night games, I was happy and sad for them both, and I'll tell you, I'm happy for Ross. Ross is a big football junkie ever since he's a kid, and announcing football is something he always had wanted to do, and he had a little bit of a chance with the Falcons to do it. So I'm happy he's getting the chance, but I want to tell you something as far as workload and everything like that. Sometimes you got, God knows, Brian and I both know this. Sometimes you got to say no, even if it's a good opportunity, because it'll start killing you.
Just look at when they first started up SmackDown. We were noticing it's not so much now. I guess maybe they've gotten to the groove or whatever, but they were making just tons of mistakes doing commentary for both those shows. Actually, Ross wasn't even doing SmackDown, but he had to be there and everything. So.
No, he's still got to be there 2 days a week. And then the schedule, like, for both of those guys, for both Ross and Lawler, if you look at it, it's like Saturday night, they got to fly to a football game. And they got to study for the football game because you can't just wing football. Jesse will wing football, don't get me wrong, because he's got enough charm that and he's a superstar. He's the superstar of the league, so he'll be able to get away with it. But those guys will not wing football. They have to study the game, and these are unknown players. It's not like they're studying like for an NFL game where, if you watch every Sunday, you pretty much half-ass know every star anyway. So they got to do that. Then they got to fly on Sunday morning from wherever city they're at to whatever city the WF tapings are Sunday night. And then they got to be out there Monday and Tuesday. And Ross has still got to be director of player personnel of the World Wrestling Federation. The King's doing whatever he's doing in Memphis. It's going to be real tough for both of them. I hope that they take Lawler off one of those WWF shows like in SmackDown. With Ross, they really shouldn't take Ross off Raw, and nor will they.
But, it's only 12 weeks, though, right?
12. Well, actually, for them it'll only be 10 because once the playoffs start, they're not going to be doing any announcing.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right.
I think 10 weeks out of the year they'll be okay. It'll be hell, but. Yeah.
I think you're right. You know what? You can go through hell. In life, you can go through hell for 10 weeks, but it's hard to go through hell for like 100 weeks.
or more.
But 10 you can do it because 3 weeks and you go, I only got 7 more weeks of this.
Yeah.
Donovan, does Donovan know if Mike Modest has been offered a deal by WCW?
Actually, right now I've heard different things that he's been contacted by them. Pretty much, what I do know is a bunch of nothing. So pretty much nothing. I don't know what their plans are, if they're planning to bring him in or if they're planning to bring Chris Daniels in. All I know is he's been contacted by him, and they are talking. So, pretty much the same thing that we heard last time.
I think that the people, who are in charge of, the booking are all kind of waiting for their marching orders. Because ultimately, Eric Bischoff's going to go, okay, I want you to sign 5 new guys, or I don't want you to sign anyone, and their futures basically depend on those marching orders. So whenever, ultimately, if Eric Bischoff hears Christopher Daniels' name a million times and sees a tape and likes him, obviously he'll be in. But a lot of guys like that, it's just a question of, okay, we need to bring in 5 to 8 new guys for for certain slots. It's like,
right.
Like they have to have the right slot. It's not just good work, or it's like we've got this opening, we've got this idea, we need a guy who looks like this for this role, and if you fit the bill, you got a chance. Van Dam might be someone, since everyone's familiar with him, where they'll just go, we need to bring in Van Dam. But I think that's what hurts, a lot of guys that are kind of like, like average size,
right,
and good ability. It's just the idea that they don't have no one's running around going for, see, we've got this role on top for a guy with average size and good ability. They're just not thinking.
They're not going out of their way to find something.
Yeah, or if it's just, and it's so easy to say, okay, he's only got average size, so therefore, it's kind of sad in a lot of ways because, if like, there are guys that are on top, and not even guys that are not on top, but guys that are awesome workers, that if they came to try out, let's just say at the power plant, which was a WCW affiliated thing, I mean, Donovan, they would go out there to run you off, and they don't know what your heart is, and they don't know what your athletic ability is. If they, you know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean.
You're lucky you went to a school where the idea wasn't to take your money and run you off the first day.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a blessing, but believe it or not, I mean, I've seen so many wrestling schools that are more or less a gimmick, just to take your money and run you off. But
also, when we were talking about size and everything,
right?
You're okay. You're in a position. What is and as far as like guys at APW, there's a lot of guys. I mean, like, you work on, like the MO of that school has always been to train guys to wrestle, and I mean, I know there's an incentive, and we were talking about this before. Modest was about like the bodies and some of the guys who they spend that kind of money, and they're in the ring every night, and yet they're not going to take the diet measures and things like that to have a presentable body, and it's kind of like if you're not going to go all out in wrestling, you're not, why are you? It's almost one of those things where unless you're going to go all out, why do it?
Exactly.
Type of thing. If what for a guy at the school, or for you in particular, for anyone, what are the pressures as far as the steroids and things like that? Because it's almost like you're almost going to go like, oh, if I only had this, and then if I grab that, you know what I mean? It's kind of got to be one of those mental things that you're always dealing with.
It is. I mean, like, the one good thing about, Roland, this is a good or bad thing, whichever you perceive it, but it's like Roland's always said, no steroids. I don't care, I don't care if it means you not getting booked, no steroids, in the school. And there's a lot of guys that have approached me that said, hey, do you think I should get on something? And I would be like, if you are, I can't tell you how to run your life. I mean, I can't tell you, not to do it, but you have to make those decisions for yourself. I suggest not. But, if you work hard, and especially like 18 and 19-year-old kids, that come up to me and ask me that question, they've got some time. And if they put it in the gym, and not, on the couch looking at the TV, I think that's a good way to start. But yeah, I mean, the pressure's there. If you're involved in the pro wrestling business, that pressure's always there. But it's just pretty much, how you choose to live your life that plays a factor in if you're going to use them or not.
I mean, in the big time, I can see the pressure being there for a lot of guys. Just, they want to be on top, they want to keep their spot, that sort of thing. But I mean, as far as the independents, I think that steroids for a lot of guys is just laziness. Like, they don't want to get in the gym, they don't want to try and work out and, build something on their own. It's just like, well,
boy, you hit it right on the head, man, because I'll tell you, you wouldn't believe how many of those 18, 19-year-old kids, I hear them talking, and they're fat, they're out of shape, and they think that one injection and they're going to look like Lex Luger.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen. I mean, when you do steroids, it does obviously enhance, what you have, but it's hard work. It's hard work regardless. It's hard work to get a body without steroids.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're absolutely
I mean, we had
right.
somebody in yesterday that was talking about, he just got on the juice or whatever, and he's talking about, I just worked out 3 hours, for 3 straight hours. It's like my third day in a row. I've been working my whole body every day. And I'm just thinking, you don't even know how to work out correctly.
Exactly.
And you're taking steroids? What's wrong with you?
I know. Yeah,
certainly nobody should take steroids unless they've got a couple of years of training behind them, only because, you want to, at the first year or two of training, you're going to get a lot of growth and gains just natural anyway.
Right.
And then, I would never recommend, steroids at the same time. It's like, it's one of those weird topics that breaks my heart because
it's going to happen.
It's a norm. It's a norm for the business.
It's a norm for the business. And I've seen guys, and I'll tell you what, it's like one of those things about the business that really drives me crazy is I've seen guys who are like 215 and good ability, and nobody gives them a second look, and then, you know, they get on that path and they get up to 265, and all of a sudden, you know, and they get deals, and then the weird part of it is then they get all the, you know, and a lot of them get all the, you know, once you start on that path, you get, you know, it's you know, there's the steroids kind of can lead to other things, and then they get in that, the bad part of the wrestling scene, which is, you know, the steroids, and then the downers so you can sleep after the steroids, and the uppers to get up, and then all of a sudden it's just like, you know, it gets so sad.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the calls right now. We're going to start with Tom in California. Tom, what's going on?
Hey, nothing much. I just have a comment and then a question. The comment first is about, you're talking about riots in professional wrestling. Actually, the last 2 shows I've been to, one being a WWF pay-per-view and one being an indie show, there have been riots with both of them. It's just been, it kind of stopped me from going for a while.
What do you mean by riots? I mean, I've been to a million shows where there's fights in the stands, but riot to me is sort of like the whole crowd's out of control.
Yeah.
Beating on each other.
And it was, the indie show I went to, actually, a 5-year-old girl got hit in the head with a chair.
Yeah, that's never good.
That tells you that.
Yeah.
And my question is for Donovan and I guess for Brian, what sacrifices do you have to make to get in a pro wrestling, or even on the indie level, do you think?
Sacrifices is in...
Like what do you have to do just to start training and having to, like, sacrifices in your life and training and everything else like that?
I think basically, you know, to get into wrestling, like Dave said, you know, earlier, don't half-ass it. I mean, if you're going to go through with pro wrestling training, and that's what you want to do with your life, you have to go out 110%. Like, you have to start eating right. You have to work out. You have to. There's no ifs. There's no maybe. I'm sleepy today. I'm going to take today off. You have to attend, you know, classes. You have to not only attend classes, but go in extra and practice in open gym. You have to, you know, pretty much dedicate your life to pro wrestling. I mean, that's the way I see it. Brian, what do you think?
I agree with it. I mean, there's a lot of, you have to be willing to be in acceptable shape. I mean, you can go to a show and there'll be a bunch of fat guys there, a bunch of, you know, for some reason, a lot of guys that have this horrible body decide not to wear shirts. I don't know why that is, but they do it on the independent circuit. And you got to work out, all that stuff. And I think, like, when you're training and that sort of thing, a lot of it is you got to be able to adjust your schedule, because they're going to tell you, look, when you need to come in here this day at 1 o'clock to 3 to train, and if you have to work that day, you're going to have to figure something out to work your way around it. You know, most shows, I think, are for the most part on the weekend, so it's usually not a big deal. But as far as, like, training, like Donovan said, it just depends on, you know, getting in there, and they'll tell you, I don't know, what days do you train down there?
We train Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
At basically all day, or?
No, actually in the evenings.
In the evening.
From like
because I mean, like up here, the training is like, you know, sometimes 1 o'clock in the afternoon, then there's another one at 4, and if you work, you're going to have to find some way to work around that so you can get in and train.
And another thing, too, is you will not become a good or even great wrestler if you just go to class on the class days and that's it.
Yeah.
It's the extra that really, really improves you.
Yep. You just got to work on having a good attitude. I mean, people talk about having a good attitude when you're in the big time and having a developmental deal and everything, but it's just important when you're working the independents. I mean, I see guys all the time. They've had 5 matches, and they're told to do a job, and they pout, and they don't perform, and it's just pathetic.
You know, it's funny. A couple years ago, I went down to L.A. and I was wrestling this real small show, and they wanted me to put this kid over who was like 14 and, you know, real scrawny. And, you know, at the time it was like I'm still kind of learning. This was probably when I was 22. I was still kind of learning, you know, so I called Mike Modest and I go, hey, you know, is this cool? I mean, this guy's like 14 and he's been wrestling for, you know, 6 months. And Mike's like, you know what? It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Just, it's experience.
Yeah.
And so that's, your attitude's a big thing, being humble. I agree with you.
Okay. Let's go to George in Chicago. George.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Good.
Hey, we're doing good.
I was wondering about, I've heard a couple rumors, or read a couple rumors, rather, about the possibility of the NWO coming back. And with the booking, like on Monday for Nitro, for instance, the way that Flair cut the promo, it reminded me more of, although the way he was saying it, that everyone was superior with Buff and the package in the ring wasn't actually accurate, but it still reminded me a lot of the Four Horsemen, and I was wondering if there was any possibility of them coming back.
There's a possibility. It just depends on, who's writing and what Bischoff thinks. There's always a possibility. I think the NWO thing was beat to death. I think that I don't see how you could bring back a Four Horsemen now.
He also did make the comment on the show. He basically said, I'm sick of the whole, company owner versus top star deal because it's already been seen. And if there's one thing that's already been seen, it's the NWO. So.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't want to see it again at all. I wouldn't. As a matter of fact, I thought that when they had DDP come out with Nash on Monday night, I thought that's what they were alluding to, and I would hope that they would go somewhere fresh from there.
To me, they've got to look forward, not look backwards.
Yeah.
Especially at this point, they're at rock bottom, so you just want to rebuild. You don't want to do some hotshot thing from the past that obviously has already been done before, and that you're just trying to play off of, because that's one of the reasons that's one of the reasons they got where they're at, is they kept going to the past whenever there was a little problem. It's like, let's go to something that was successful in the past, and then all of a sudden their promotion just seemed like it was so in the past.
Yeah, you're right.
Hey, Dave.
Yep.
What'd you think of that match on Nitro? Shannon Moore and Shane Helms against Kidman and Ray Jr.
I loved it.
I did too. I was actually, hats off to those guys, because I'll tell you, that was one of the best matches I've seen on that show in a long, long, long time.
Yeah, that was.
I just hope that like Shannon Moore, who worked so hard and is probably one of the lowest paid guys in that whole company.
Right.
I just hope that for WCW's sake and to build that, if a guy comes in there and can do something like that the announcers I just want to see them just go in there and just go what a performance by Shannon Moore last week. I mean, even when I was a kid and wrestling was it was so different than it is now.
Big
okay,
time.
But I mean, I remember if a job guy, we had a very unique territory, San Francisco, and Donovan, probably. Did you ever see the Roy Shire stuff?
Yeah, I did. Roland's educated me a lot on that stuff.
Okay, because what we had, which was unique. I mean, there are other territories like this, but we used to have on television, basically in a 1-hour show, we would have 3 matches, sometimes 4, but generally 3. And they were what you would call squash matches, but they were long. I mean, they were 12 minutes.
Right.
And so to do a 12-minute match, I mean, you can't just kill somebody for 12 minutes. It just gets old after about the 3rd minute. So the underneath guys got a hell of a lot of offense in, and they made contests out of it. And I mean, I just remember, these matches that you wouldn't think are good and where everybody watching knew who was going to win were exciting as hell a lot of the time. And guys would, I mean, I remember a guy would do really good against a top guy in a job match, and he would lose at the end. But, it would, people would talk about it, and the announcers would talk about, what a performance this guy did against, Ray Stevens, because everyone had a great performance against Ray Stevens.
Right.
Coincidentally, right?
Right.
And it was one of those things where those guys who never won a match got an identity, and, I just hope that these guys in WCW don't have guys that get squashed, but just these guys, if a guy does that, I just hope that they just, play it up and play it up and play it up, as opposed to somebody, and this is to his credit, and it's Paige. When Paige has a good match on pay-per-view, he'll go to the announcers and he'll go, he'll build it up as probably a better match than it was, but what the hell, that's what wrestling's about. Because I remember when Paige and Goldberg had a match on one of the pay-per-views. It was a really good match. It may have been Goldberg's one of his 2 or 3 best matches. And, I mean, the announcers were talking about it as match of the year because Paige told them to do it. And I just, and it's like, I just wish that,
they wouldn't have to be told.
Yeah. And the problem is that no one's, from the announcing side, everyone's afraid to do something, to say the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. So, you're careful and you don't really say anything. And unfortunately, because of that, a lot of guys' hard work just kind of goes unnoticed.
Right. Yeah, big time. Because those guys, they worked their asses off, and that was a good match. And like you said, they actually gave them some time, to work. show the
You know, early in your career, because I was at the show, you did a dive and you hit your head on the floor, and it was pretty. I guess it was a pretty serious injury. You did a gimmick where you were not goofy and came back, and it was actually a hilarious gimmick for a while there. I mean,
right.
I guess it ran its course after a while, but that night, I mean, I remember that was a scary night, at least as a fan watching it, because I just remember it was and how did you feel afterwards? And did it like when you're lying there and you're really, really hurt, and did you think those, like, is this, doing these dives, is it worth it, or was it just one of those things? Well, I'm a wrestler and wrestlers get hurt.
That definitely went through my head. In fact, I was telling someone yesterday, when I first came into APW, that was my thing. Like, I was the guy that Super Diablo wasn't here anymore, and I was the guy that pretty much risked life and limb, and that's what I used to get onto the cards. And Roland is a big fan of the high flying, and so I just pretty much didn't care. I'd just be reckless abandon out there and pretty much dive and think that I was indestructible. And when I did hit my head on the moonsault, I was I sat there for a minute and I just thought, you know what, you got to tone this down, or else you might not be able to walk, someday. And so it changed me. I definitely thought, man, better focus on mat wrestling a little bit more and on psychology instead of killing yourself, because you're not going to last too long that way.
Let me go mention this here.
Almost the same type of deal as the Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
Just killing themselves so often, and now it's like, Jeff will save the big stuff for the very end where people remember it.
Right. It's like how
they're in the last couple of months. I mean, you've seen a real difference with the Hardy Boys, though.
Yeah.
I think, as far as just working a lot smarter, and I think their matches are in many ways. I mean, they're better in many ways, but I think to the fans they're just as good.
Yeah.
You don't hear people going like, oh, the Hardy Boys have gotten boring or anything like that.
I mean, if Jeff does like 15 scary things at the beginning of the match, and it's a 10-minute match, by the end you've pretty much forgotten it. You just remember he did a bunch of crazy stuff, whereas if he does a bunch of stuff right at the very end, that's what the fans are going to be left with.
Means a little more.
I think also once you make a reputation like that, you only have to do like one big move, and like everyone's satisfied with it.
Yeah, fully.
Keeping a reputation is a lot easier than actually making it. Making a reputation is hard as hell, I think. Let's see. This is from Tim, who says he's talking about Fox is having a Saturday morning kids show called Los Luchadors. I remember we talked about this before. I don't know. It goes. I don't know if Viacom has anything to do with Fox or Turner. Actually, they don't. But wouldn't it be a good way for them to get kids into wrestling again? I don't know. Have you heard anything of the Los Luchadors show? And Tom Howard, I think, don't they have like an Anglo playing like the star of the show?
Yeah, I think they do.
Really? I haven't heard anything about that.
Yeah, we'd heard about it before the September season started, about this Saturday morning show, and it's about masked wrestlers, and Tom Howard, who's a big American, is in the starring role. So it's kind of funny. Well, let's see. Let's go to Charles in Connecticut. Charles, what's going on?
How you doing, Dave?
Doing good.
Who do you think's going to be Bischoff's top booker?
I don't know. I don't know that he's made the decision. Johnny Ace seems to have a lot of power right now, and a lot of people think Johnny Ace is going to turn out, real well in this thing. Don't know. I mean, I heard every rumor: Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes. I don't know. I don't know that the final decision's even been made. I mean, he'll probably be interviewing different people.
What about Ric Flair? How do you think he's going to use him?
That's hard. I think Rick got his way back into this role as a heel, and the problem with Ric Flair is that Ric Flair is technically a great heel. The only problem is that nobody wants to boo him because he's Ric Flair.
Yeah.
So he's fighting, and he enjoys being a heel far more than a babyface. But he's fighting what the people want by being a heel, and it creates that weird reaction, especially like in the Carolinas where he's like a god, to where, people just don't want to go because they don't want to go to a show where Ric Flair's trying to get them to boo him. So Ric Flair as a heel hasn't worked in many years. So I don't know. I think that Ric Flair's going to end up back as a babyface.
Is it true that Bischoff's closing a power plant?
That's a rumor that's been going around because he made a comment about sort of like the power plant worked in its day. We need to go through new methods. So, and people took it as he's closing it. And he may be. I don't know, but that's, I know that they are looking at new ways of developing talent. I know that they want to copy the WF model. WF model is a great model, I think, where you have a territory, and these guys are getting, Ohio Valley is such a great thing for these young guys, and because they're out there working 4 nights a week, they're not traveling very much, so they can be in the school every single day learning, then going out and wrestling they're 4 nights a week in front of the same basic fans, so they gotta learn their promos, and they can't do the same match week after week because it's the exact same fans, and it's getting them really good experience, and there's, they're not pressure. I mean, if the house goes down from 80 people to 50 people, it's like they're not under that pressure because it's that the territory can go down because the territory's there just as a learning thing. So, I think WCW needs something like that. I think it'd be good to, I don't know. I mean, WCW may be based in LA, so maybe it'll be out here. Who knows?
Going back to Bischoff real fast, I know this is like an impossible dream, but I hope if he learned one thing while he was gone, and if there's one thing he's going to change now, it's that he will not let politics get in the way of what's best for the company. Because I think Flair, probably more, like you said, as a babyface and as a heel, but I think in any role, he can do so much for that company. And I think if Bischoff is going to do the same deal where, I don't personally like Flair, so I'm going to make him look like an idiot wherever we go, particularly in his hometown, then things like that are just going to kill a company again.
I was thinking this the other day, since I know you're having Bruno on. If you think Bruno was working today, was wrestling, what do you think they would do with him? Do you think he would have any chance of being a main event guy?
Well, if Bruno did what he did then, no, because nobody did what they did then. You know what I mean? It was short of maybe like a Ray Stevens. But, if he was coming up, I mean, it's funny because what would, if Bruno Sammartino was coming up, I mean, God only knows what he would look like. If he did what God, because there are very few people then and very few people now who legitimately were benching in the mid-5s that never took a steroid. So I mean, for Bruno, if you ever look at the young Bruno Sammartino, he's really, really thick, and you kind of look at this guy and go, man, this guy, and I mean, he didn't do the stuff, and you go like, wow, but then again, in those days, I mean, his appeal was like the strongest man, the Italian thing. It was all of those kind of appeals that really don't, like you go into a Boston and it's like an Italian star, so you want to make him on top to draw the Italians. It's a type of promotion that's different now. So it's it's a totally different game. And one thing about wrestling is that it's all timing. We talked about this yesterday with all the guys that followed the Road Warriors that, got all gassed up and painted their face and got their mohawks, and none of them ever made it in the business because the Road Warriors got there first.
Well, that's another good point. I don't think, I know Animal's brother is a booker and everything like that, but I think that was just really lame having him as the surprise, the mask guy. And I think there's other people that.
What if it would have been Rick Steiner?
That would have been. Well, at least Rick's been in the company.
At least they're already paying his salary.
Yeah.
They're not having a new salary.
Yeah, we might as well do something with him, but that wouldn't have been a really good idea either. But I don't know. I don't get Animal. I liked him back in his day with Hawk, but.
I was just reading all these emails we got about people just going, man, Animal's the worst. What a horrible surprise. And I was thinking, it could have been Rick Steiner. Would that really been any better?
No, it wouldn't. It would have been. I think that it's a wash, but I think that the difference is that, like I said, is that you're not adding another one to the contract.
Yeah.
I mean, it's someone you already have. I mean, hey, it should have been Rob Van Dam.
Yeah.
For the moment, and it just should have been. It's a nice way to introduce him in a key spot. Give him a program. I mean, and the other thing is that, I mean, I know that there's like guys that would be resentful of it, but God knows that they have to take a guy who's not in the company and make him a top guy right away, just to show people to show the top guys that they're not locked in their spot, and to show everyone in the company that it's a new year and it's a new time, And
prove yourself all over again.
And it's right. It's not like you got that glass ceiling, because that's the killer is that is the mental thing of, like, no matter how good we are, we have to go to the WWF to be stars. We have to get out of our contract. You know what I mean? That's what created such a bad environment there for so long.
I think Rob Van Dam would probably be better off going to WCW, because they could possibly create him as a top star or a mid-card star, whereas in WWF, I think he'd just get lost.
And I think he'd have more freedom in WCW because they're looking to make a star, whereas in WWF they don't need to. Everything's there, and it's kind of like a thing there where you have to pay your like, you know, if he went to WWF, he'd have to start from the bottom and work his way up. And, you know, plus, you know, they have their qualms about him because, you know, their guys didn't give him good recommendations, and they rely a lot on, you know, having a cohesive locker room. In WCW, I think he could shoot to the top, and there wouldn't be as many roadblocks because they need a new star. I mean, I remember, you know, like Brody, when Brody was like a real big deal in the 80s, Brody used to always theorize for him, and of course he was a unique talent, was that in any promotion war, he always wanted to work for the weak side because the weak side would put him on top right away, whereas the strong side wouldn't, because they needed, you know, a hot shot thing. So if you ever looked at, like, I mean, in the promotion wars, he always worked, you know, he always worked for the underdog. Anything else?
Is he currently available, to be able to work for WCW or WWF?
Van Dam?
Yeah.
Yeah, Van Dam can go anywhere he wants. Yeah.
So as far as ECW, they're shut down right now, right?
I don't know what the term is. They're hoping for a deal. The only thing that they have on a schedule, as best I know, is March 11th, and they don't even have an arena for that, but they have a pay-per-view date. I would presume they'll probably do it. There will, you know, there's going to be guys. Not everyone's going to get a job somewhere else, so I think that they'll probably do that show. But, you know, I mean, I don't know how, if, you know, they barely exist. You know, Donovan, do you still talk to Matt Heisen?
No. Last I talked to him was probably like about 8 months ago.
Okay. I was just wondering if you were still, because, you know, he went to, you know, because he's an alumnus from your school and everything. Now, he would have, I'm trying to think of the timing. You were still around. I mean, you were already there when he was still around.
Yeah, I came in 96, so he was just, he stayed for probably about 8 months after I came. Yeah.
Because you got, I mean, I seem to remember seeing you work with him.
I never actually worked a match with him.
In a tag? You never did? Okay. I mean, I've been to a lot of those shows in that era.
Yeah. No, you have been to a lot of those shows. He actually had one match. The last match that he wrestled for us before he went to ECW was my first pro match.
Okay.
The same night, so.
So you did never actually
I never got to wrestle him, no. Okay. Unfortunately. Would have loved to, though. He didn't.
Anything else, Charles?
Just one last thing. Is it definite that Rob Van Dam will be leaving ECW?
No. If ECW gets a good deal and they can pay him, Rob was on the show the other day, and I mean, his first choice is to stay ECW, but you know they have to be able to pay him, and right now they can't. Yeah. So that's why he's looking elsewhere. But if ECW could afford him, I would say he would rather stay there than go to one of the other two companies, because in ECW he can do the match he wants to do. And he'll be, you know, and he can be the world champion, or he can be challenging for the world title. Whereas in WCW, there's a lot of politics that can get in the way. In WWF, quite frankly, you know, they're not.
Bunch of short matches too.
There's short matches, and also then they're not doing cartwheels to get Rob Van Dam. I mean, you know, he's going to have to. I don't want to say the word beg because that's too strong a word, but he's going to have to be very humble and go, you know, and ask for a job and start at the bottom there. They're not going to, you know, they're not going to bend over backwards for him because they already have a crew, and they have all kinds of good guys, and he'd have to prove himself all over again.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Okay, this is from Todd Martin, who says, in honor of WCW's glorious 12 years under Ted Turner, I put together a list of WCW's 10 greatest moments. Hopefully Eric Bischoff will provide many such tremendous moments for us to enjoy for years to come. Number 10, the Black Scorpion.
Where's the midget exploding boat?
The midget with the exploding boat's number 4. Okay, number 10 is the Black Scorpion angle. Number 9 is the Blood Runs Cold promos, which in fact
they're back.
They're spoofing them right now. Number 8 was David Sullivan's "I Want to Be a Hulkamaniac" music. Actually, that was a song written before Dave Sullivan, and they created the character because they already had the song written. because I remember on one of those Hulk Hogan German albums, Jimmy Hart or somebody sent me this Hulk Hogan album, and they had that annoying song. And then, like, it was a year later or so when Dave Sullivan came out, and that was his entrance music. The Giant falls off of Cobo Hall, recovers quickly, in fact, quick enough for the main event.
Comes to the main event wet. Don't forget that part.
Yeah. Number 6 is a tie between WCW signed such legends as Hogan, Luger, Sid, and Mr. T, and WCW releases such jobbers as Mean Mark, Cactus Jack, Chris Benoit, and Stunning Steve. Well, Benoit was a unique circumstance. But that firing of Steve Austin, boy, when they write the record book, that's going right up there with when the Boston Braves, sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees. Wow. I mean, because Mean Mark, if nothing else, nobody, it was a great gimmick that they gave the Undertaker. And Mean Mark, when he was there, he was really a tall guy who was kind of a good athlete, but didn't really show a lot of personality in WCW in the Skyscrapers. And whereas Steve Austin, like everybody knew Steve Austin was like this awesome worker. And to fire him because he had a torn tricep I was just, even at the time, it was stupid. Obviously, in hindsight, it's far more stupid. Number 5, Bob Eaton, PN News, Terry Taylor and Steve Austin bring the scaffold match to new heights. Yeah, I think scaffold matches have never been the same since that one. Number 4 is the evil boat bombing midget. Number 3 is the debut of the Shockmaster. Ooh, boy. That was fun. Donovan, do you remember that one?
I do.
That was really funny.
I know. That was you could hear him laughing as he comes through
he
the
fell
wall.
through the wall. Oh, my God. Number 2 was David Arquette and Vince Russo joined the ranks of Gotch, Hackenschmidt, and Thez. Oh, yeah. And number 1, Loch Ness. Yeah. Let's see. This is from Sean Keys, who goes, who do you guys think is the worst world heavyweight champion ever?
David Arquette.
I think it's... There you go.
You know what? I would say Vince Russo. You want to know why? Because he gave it to himself.
That was the most pathetic. And you know why? Because if you compare Arquette and Russo, you know what the difference is?
Arquette was athletic?
No. With David Arquette, okay, there was a method to the madness, and the idea was David Arquette was something of a celebrity, and they would get all kinds of mainstream fame, and publicity.
Movie
they got the movie coming out. But with David Arquette, they got like Entertainment Tonight covered him, USA Today gave him a picture, a color picture in the newspaper, and they did all those things, and that is what a promotion wants. The ultimate lesson of David Arquette was that with all of that publicity WCW got that week, that it would have never gotten mainstream. That, as I recall, they did their lowest rating for Nitro the next Monday with all that publicity. So that just said that all that publicity was great, but the wrestling fans didn't want to see it. They were really upset, so they didn't watch the show. So we learned from that. It's like, before the Arquette show, I didn't know if they were going to do a good rating or a bad rating.
Mm-hmm.
When they did the bad rating, it told us, okay, they did the bad rating. It was a big failure. So, of course, we don't have them lose the title. We have them go to a pay-per-view, and then the pay-per-view does the all-time low buy rate at the time, although they've gone lower since. And that was like, it was an idea that totally backfired, okay? But there was a method to it. With Russo, there was no upside to Russo whatsoever, okay? We already learned from Arquette that that's not what people wanted from the world title. And also, remember we were talking the week before Nassau, they sold no tickets for Nassau for that match when Russo and Booker T was announced. 0 tickets. Like, I think, and they had the lowest.
Under 100 or something.
Some ridiculously tiny number of tickets after that match was announced, and they did the lowest attendance, I believe, for any wrestling show ever at the Nassau Coliseum with that main event. So knowing all that going in, for Russo to still put the title on himself, to me, that was far more stupid and far worse. But actually, Sean here said Steve Corino is pretty close, if not the worst. We all know there have been as many champs that can't work, but they have look and size. Corino had neither. He's an okay worker, nothing great. He doesn't belong in the same class as Taz, Mike Awesome, Sabu, and many other ECW champs. Why Corino is in the record books as World Heavyweight Champion, Rob Van Dam isn't, will never make sense to me. Well, Van Dam, there was a reason they were always building for the chase, and Corino, it was just Paul's decision to go with him because he thought he was a good talker or whatever. Again, there wasn't this big giant plethora of guys to choose from.
Yeah.
Although, God, they took it off of Lynn in 1 month, and Lynn was a very good worker. Let's see. What can WWF do with the China character? Do you ever see them putting the WWF title belt around her waist?
Absolutely not.
No, and yeah. Says, did you hear that WCW is going to have a meeting with New Japan this week? Actually, that story's been kind of. It's not a wrong story, but it's not a right story about WCW and New Japan. What it is that New Japan had a booking meeting on Monday. Well, I mean, it's not even that. I mean, Eric Bischoff and Masa Saito have been friends for a long time, and Masa Saito's been, in the loop of what's going to happen. And there will be a meeting at some point between Eric Bischoff and New Japan, but there is no. I can't say today because this is as of Wednesday. As of Wednesday, there was no date on anyone's books because it's kind of like when their schedule and his schedule both have an open moment. Either Eric's going to go to Japan or they're going to come to Los Angeles or wherever Eric is, and there will be a meeting. But it's not like there's a meeting this like Friday or there's an emergency meeting tomorrow or next week or anything. But, there will be a meeting. I'm sure they will work together because both sides want to, both sides probably can work with each other. Let's see what else we got here.
Donovan, did you see Sid break his leg?
Yeah, I actually saw pictures of it on the internet, and man, it was brutal.
You didn't see the video footage though?
No, I didn't. I saw it each clip, clip by clip, as him jumping off the turnbuckle, but I didn't see any actual footage.
They didn't show it again last night on Thunder, so I don't know what that means.
I think they don't want to overdo it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they could have shown it once on Thunder. I think it still would have been okay. It's a weird thing because, they should have shown it. It was part of a match. You know what I mean? I don't think it's exploitive if it's part of a match because it's part of the story of what happened. It's you know what I mean? It's not a contrived thing.
It happened.
It was so weird because it looked like something from a movie. With someone's special effects. It just didn't look like...
it didn't look real. It's like, how did a really do that?
Yeah. But that was just a weird thing. I mean, just when he's out there trying to impress the boss by doing something that he'd never done before. And, what can you say? That was scary, though.
Yeah.
Okay, we're totally out of time. Donovan, I want to thank you very much for doing the show.
Hey, no problem. Thank you guys. It was great.
Okay, and we wish you good luck in the future. Any future dates for you?
Yeah, I'm going to be in Chicago wrestling for Midwest Championship Wrestling on March 3rd, March 30th, March 31st. I know Reckless Youth and Jason Reigns are up there too. I'm going to be going to IPW in Florida, hopefully in April, and keep working some UPW shows on this January 31st, going to UPW and wrestling there. So trying to stay busy, hopefully going down to ECWA and wrestling for Jim Kettner here soon. So got some stuff on the table.
Good. And Brian, of course, we'll be seeing you tomorrow, and we'll see everybody tomorrow at 5.